Good evening, everyone. The March 19th, 2025 Arlington County Board of Zoning Appeals is now in session. Good evening and welcome. I am Richard Kaplan, Chair of the Board of Zoning Appeals. This board is made up of 5 citizens appointed by the Circuit Court. Tonight, in addition to myself, we have members Inta Malice, Judy Freshman, Carl McCroskey, and Alex Kumana. Also present is the professional staff, including Meg Ryan, BZA Associate Planner, and Brett Goldberg, BZA Associate Planner. I believe joining us online is Stephen Rissy, PRIM's Supervisor. Did I catch everyone? Is that everyone? Okay. To avoid disruptions, we ask that you please place your mobile devices in silent mode. Before we begin tonight's hearing, I will discuss this board's powers and procedures for tonight's hearing. This board's powers are prescribed in the Code of Virginia and are set out in further detail in the county's zoning ordinance adopted by the county board. The Board of Zoning Appeals does not have the power to rezone property or to amend the regulations set forth in the ordinance. That authority rests with the county board. This board does have the authority to do 3 things. First, the BZA can approve use permits that allow modifications of placement requirements for structures on 1- and 2-family lots where there is no option in the zoning ordinance to allow such modifications. In order to approve a use permit, the Arlington zoning ordinance requires that this board find that the proposal will not adversely affect the health or safety of persons residing in the neighborhood, will not be detrimental to public welfare or injurious to property or improvements in the neighborhood, and will not be in conflict with the purposes of the master plan and land use and zoning related policies of the county. In making these findings, the BZA shall consider whether the modification will promote compatibility of the development with the surrounding neighborhood because the structure's overall size, footprint, and placement are similar to those of the structures on the properties surrounding the lot in question, and whether the modification will help preserve natural landform, historical features, and/or significant trees and foliage. When approving use permits, the Board of Zoning Appeals may impose conditions that it deems necessary and in the public interest, including but not limited to the duration of the use permit. This board does not have the authority to grant use permits to modify the requirements for the expanded housing option developments. Second, the BZA can grant variances from the specific requirements of the zoning ordinance. When granting variances, the burden of proof is on the applicant to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that the strict application of the ordinance would unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property, and the need for the variance would not be shared generally by other properties, and such variance is not contrary to the purposes of the ordinance, or that the strict application of the ordinance would unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property, or that granting the variance would alleviate a hardship due to a physical condition relating to the property or improvements thereon at the time of the effective date of the ordinance, or alleviate a hardship by granting a reasonable modification to a property or improvement thereon requested by or on behalf of a person with a disability. In all variance cases, the property for which the variance is being requested was acquired in good faith, and any hardship was not created by the applicant. That the variance granted will not be a substantial detriment to adjacent properties and nearby properties in the proximity of the geographic area, and that the condition or situation of the property concerned is not of so general or reoccurring in nature as to make reasonably practicable the adoption of an amendment to the ordinance. That granting the variance will not result in a use that is not otherwise permitted on the property or change the zoning classification of the property, and that the relief or remedy obtained through the variance is not available through a special exception process as provided for under the zoning or subdivision ordinance. Third, the BZA shall hear and decide appeals of the zoning administrator or from any order, requirement, decision, or determination made by any other administrative officer in the administration or enforcement of Title 15.2, Article 7 of the Code of Virginia. In exercising its powers, the board may reverse or affirm wholly or in part, or may modify an order, requirement, decision, or determination appealed. The determination of the administrative officer or zoning administrator shall be presumed correct by this board. The appellant has the burden of proof to rebut that presumption of correctness by a preponderance of the evidence. The board shall consider any applicable ordinance, laws, and regulations in making its decisions, and must base our judgment on whether the administrative officer was correct. The concurring vote of a majority of the membership of this board shall be necessary to reverse any order or determination. Now on to tonight's hybrid hearing. For those who are participating in the room, on the front table, you will find a QR code linking to a copy of the application package, including the staff report for each case before us this evening. For those participating virtually, a copy of each application package can be found on the Arlington County BZA website. There is also a link in the chat for the application packages. I recommend that if you have not yet seen that report for your case, that you review that report before your case is called. If you are attending virtually and lose connectivity, please reconnect with us by phone. If you are attending via Teams, please keep yourself muted and cameras off until called upon. Turn off the sound on any other devices around you to minimize interference. When called upon to speak, please turn on your camera and unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon that is located in the meeting command bar. County staff does not have the ability to unmute you. The meeting chat is active for technical support assistance only. The meeting chat should not be used for discussion, public comments, questions about agenda items, or requests for more information. All public comments must be shared verbally or have been previously provided in writing for the record during the assigned public testimony period. This evening, staff will call each case and will provide a brief staff report and recommendation. Next, board members will ask questions of staff that they may have. Applicants or their representative will be given an opportunity to make comments to support the application or appeal. Next, all speakers for or against the item will be called. Speakers must fill out a speaker slip online or is available on the front of the table in the front of the room. After we hear from speakers for and against the proposal, the board may permit the applicant a brief opportunity to clarify any points. The board may ask questions of any speakers, but will not permit any cross-examination or direct questioning by others. For tonight's hearing, this board has deemed the following time limits for speakers to be sufficient: 20 minutes for applicants of appeals, 5 minutes for applicants of use permits and variances, 3 minutes for representatives of organizations, and 2 minutes for individuals. After the board has gathered all information we need and have discussed the case, we will decide the matter by voting on a motion duly made and seconded. A majority of the membership is needed to approve any motion. Please be respectful of the time allotted. This is a public forum, and tonight's meeting will be recorded and posted on the county's website. All information associated with tonight's hearing, whether spoken or written, is subject to the Freedom of Information Act requirements. Any appeal from the decision of this board must be made to the circuit court in accordance with state law. After your case of interest is heard, you are welcome to stay for the balance of the session or leave at your convenience. Before we call the first case, I have some administrative matters to attend to. Tonight, I have a request from BZA member Ms. Freshman to participate virtually. Virginia law requires that there is an in-person quorum, and as such, I will note that we do have an in-person quorum for the record. Ms. Freshman has requested to participate virtually because she is traveling outside of our jurisdiction over 50 miles. Ms. Freshman, can you please certify that you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. I will certify for those of us in the room that we can hear you. Next, we have a couple appeals to get scheduled. We currently have 3 appeals to schedule. I have been informed by staff earlier today that appeals ZAPP 25-001, ZAPP 25-002, and ZAPP 24-0016 are deemed complete and their fees have all been paid. Is that correct?
That's
right.
correct.
Yes, that's correct.
As such, I would like to seek unanimous consent from my colleagues to schedule these items for our carryover hearing on May 22nd, 2025. Any objection? Hearing no objection, they are scheduled. I would also like to seek unanimous consent from my colleagues to remove from the agenda administrative item, agenda item, appeal 12-ZAPP 24-0016 from our agenda tonight, as we just scheduled that item for May. Any objections?
No objection.
Thank you. Do my colleagues have any other business to address tonight? If not, Mr. Goldberg, can you please call the first case?
Yes, Mr. Kaplan. The first item is case number 12008-24-VA-2, carryover and revise. This is a variance request by the Law Office of William B. Lawson, PC, on behalf of Elias and Leanne Nimmer, the owners, to permit a total main building footprint of 39% instead of 30% as permitted, and to permit a total lot coverage of 45.6% instead of 40% as permitted, regarding a new rear deck addition to an existing one-family detached dwelling on a corner lot in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 2255 South Kent Street within the Arlington Ridge Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the variance. And please note that we have additional speakers who signed up to speak on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Goldberg. Do my colleagues have questions for staff on this item?
Mr.
Ms. Malik.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I just want to review with staff real quickly. There's a basement, there's a first floor, and there's a second floor, or is the basement and the first floor the same? As I'm reading the staff report.
So there's a basement level that comes out to the actual sidewalk of the property. Let me see if I can pull it up on the screen for you. So this first level that I have here
That's
actually is the basement level, but it
Okay,
has a sidewalk that comes out to the street.
okay.
This is their first floor level, and then they have a second floor.
And that's
So
the second floor.
yes,
Okay, so there are 3 levels that we're
Yeah.
talking about. Okay, that helps. Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Malice. Is the applicant with us or his attorney?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, I'm William B. Lawson Jr., represent the applicant. I wanted to kind of share with you what's happened since we were last before you. As you may recall, our neighbors, the Hugheses, had an issue with a lot of water on their property. And we hired DeLashment engineers, they're civil engineers, and we had them do a report. And based upon that report, we came up with an agreement. I talked to Meg about whether or not we should have conditions imposed, and she felt like an agreement would be the better way to do it. We have a signed agreement. I can submit a copy for the record. And based upon that, what we're going to do is during construction, and there's not going to be a lot, but we're going to put in some foundations. There will be a sediment and erosion control plan. After the deck is installed, we will put a mulch bed underneath the deck, and part of the roof is going to be piped, and we're going to install a dry well. One of the things that concerned the board last time was the lower deck, and we decided to just leave that the way it is. We're not changing that, and that's going to go ahead and stay the way it is. You all had some questions about the ability of Mr. Niemer to live on the middle floor, I guess, or the main floor. And we have a plan showing that. And in order to live without stairs, you have to have the ability to cook, and the kitchen's on this level. You have to have a place where you can sleep, and what's called the breakfast room will probably be made into that. And then you need to have bathroom facilities. And behind the garage, we can remove some partitions, and we can make that handicapped accessible when that time comes for Mr. Niemer. Now, talking about the test for a variance and the hardship, I have a little bit of a disagreement with staff. I think some of this is caused by the property. And in a normal situation, a flat house in the middle of a neighborhood, we would probably just put in a patio. And patios, while they may be impervious, they don't up your coverage. Here, we have the only level place is to the right of the garage. and it's adjacent to 23rd Street. There's a lot of traffic, and it would be very difficult for Mr. Niemer to get to it. And the much superior solution is to do this deck. And because of the steep topography, he can't do a patio. It has to be a deck. And therefore, we have to have the additional coverage. We have shared with you before about how important it is for people to be outside and to be able to enjoy sunlight. And we also think the higher deck will give us sunlight given the positioning of the house. With the improvements that Lashman recommended we do, I think that we meet the test about no negative impact on adjacent property. Mr. Niemer is here, and he'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about his medical situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do my colleagues have Ms. McCroskey?
I have a couple questions. Here's my concern is, we have the hardship test, we have the new Valerie unreasonable restriction test, which I don't know that is passed in this case simply because there's a house with a deck currently on the property. And more importantly, I guess, if we have a disability, Mr. Niemer, as I understand it, does not require a wheelchair at this time.
No.
That's planned for, expected in the future. And
Correct.
this is planning to get to that point. Do we have any idea of, obviously no one can predict 100%, but do we have an idea of approximately when that need might arise?
Why don't I let Mr. Niemer share that?
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Niemer, can you come forward and speak into the microphone?
Do I have to push any buttons?
No, you can just go ahead and speak.
Okay. For the record, this is Elias Nimmer, and I'm here to answer your questions.
Yeah.
Can you restate the
Sure.
question, please?
So really, my question is that the test is when someone has a disability that limits a major life activity, we need to understand why these improvements are necessary for that. So one of the things that we've been told is that at some point in the future, you will need to use a wheelchair, and that this deck is needed to accommodate room for a wheelchair to get outside and for the sunlight. So I guess my question is, do we have an idea of when that is happening in the future, or can you otherwise tell us what the need is to have a different deck than is currently on your house to support you?
Okay. The current deck is at the basement level. We basically will have to walk down the steps and then make the effort to exit of a side door. What we're trying to do is add the deck at the level where we spent most of our time. And then the reason for my health condition is I'm fighting multiple myeloma cancer, which is incurable, but I'm fortunate and grateful to have been able to put it under control, and it hasn't changed for 3.5 years. Okay. But the treatment that I received, and I had to travel to Boston to get it, basically killed my immune system and ruined my balance. While I still can walk around carefully and slowly, if at some point aging, and that will do it. That's the
Thank you. And I really appreciate your candor, but I am actually going to let you stop there because it helps me more to remember that this is a deck that's going a floor above. And I think I was not focusing on that very well before. So that's helpful to my question. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
We have a speaker, I think, Mr. Hughes.
Yeah, so we had talked previously about my concern about water issues on our property as a result of this. So as he said, they hired a civil engineer to do a review. They've done stuff and signed agreements so that they will address the any water issues. What they are planning on doing should make any water situation better than it is currently. So we don't have any objections to the use permit being granted.
Thank you. And thank you for coming back to,
Yep.
to update us. Ms. Mellis, I'm sorry, we have a question. Can you turn on your microphone?
Who's the question for?
Well, Mr. Lawson, I can ask you, so if the deck is on the second floor,
The deck is on the middle floor, yes,
yes,
ma'am.
well, yes,
That's where he'll have to live in the future.
right. So are there footings in the ground? And is that the water issue now? Given that we're not doing anything to the
No, I
ground floor.
I was very surprised when we met with Delashman out at the site. I never thought that a deck would add to the water runoff, but it does. It's not a whole lot, but it does create additional water runoff. And so based on that, I asked Delashman, what can we do to make this better? And they came up with the recommendations that we're going to go ahead and implement.
Okay, so there's no footings or anything. It's just the area of the deck being.
Yes, underneath the deck, we're also going to put some mulch or maybe stone. We don't know, whatever will work the best. He's going to tell us what to do.
Okay.
Okay.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Discussion with the board.
I'll tell you where I'm coming from, and everybody else can. I am uncomfortable adopting this under the disability hardship because the hardship is prospective, and many of us have prospective disabilities or are expected to have even as we age. And so that's where I'm a little hung up. I do think that the topography issue is relevant, and I would consider adopting this based on the topography, changing our resolution to eliminate the hardship reasoning and go strictly on topography and sort of punting. But because I just have a problem with the prospective disability.
Miss McCruskey.
Yeah, so I will say I do have a concern about the hardship because it needs to really restrict the use, and I think that's not met. On the other hand, I agree with you. It makes me a little bit uncomfortable about the prospective nature of this. However, I think what we have is a situation where the disability, we've been given enough information that, in fact, the diagnosis exists and that it's very likely to require the use of a wheelchair and to require him to be able to get out in the sunlight in the fairly near future. And so, although I do have concerns about either test being exactly met, I would support it on that basis, on the basis of the disability, because I think it is prospective, but it is more imminent than most people have given his diagnosis.
Any further comment? Ms. Freshman, looks like you have something. No? Okay.
So again, I don't want to vote against the project, but I will based on the resolution in terms of what the hardship is.
I too am a little uncomfortable with the prospective disability, and I think I did not ask Mr. Nimmer where he was residing in the house, but I suspect based on the testimony that he's residing on the third floor at the moment. And I'd be more comfortable if the renovations on the, I don't know, the floor under where the floor where the deck or porch is going to go, the deck, I'm sorry, if those renovations had already been complete with a, bathroom, shower facility, and then that was actually turned into a bedroom. So I'm a little uncomfortable with going forward with this when none of the other changes that are going to be required for this prospective disability are met.
Mr. Chairman, I can try a resolution, or Ms. McCroskey can try a resolution, neither. You can try it as is, and then we can do an alternate.
Yes, although maybe if you want, Ms. Malice, if you want to make a motion that will accommodate your interest in having something, a whereas maybe that reflects the
So if I can
need for the topography, the conditions, then
See, I would remove, because right now the resolution reads that it is based on, it's not based on topography, it's based on disability. And I would change the resolution to say it's based on topography and remove the language about disability.
And I know that variances are not supposed to be precedential, but I also am kind of afraid of setting a precedent of a prospective disability is enough to get your variance granted.
So the second, I want to make sure the proposed resolution, the second whereas reads, the granting of this variance would not alleviate a hardship due to physical condition of the property. I would change that to a positive, and then there's a whereas later.
yeah, it's
I'm looking-
immediately
Oh,
next
it's that, yeah, it's that it's based on the grant. I would eliminate that. Or put that in the negative, not based on the hardship. So that would be my motion if you want me to make it, or if you want to try the motion as it reads and see where it goes, and then I'll modify it if it doesn't pass.
Why don't I'll go ahead and make, if you can put it up on this, oh, it's right here. I'm going to make the motion as it is. Whereas I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution granting variance V1200824VA2.
Second.
A motion made by Ms. McCroskey and seconded by Ms. Freshman. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call the roll. Ms. Malice,
No?
Ms. Freshman,
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey,
Aye.
Mr. Kumana. Aye. Chair votes no, motion passes 3-2. Don't go anywhere. We have another one. Mr. Goldberg, can you call the next case?
Yes, Mr. Kaplan, the associated use permit is case number 12009-24-UP-1, carryover and revised. A use permit request by the law office of William B. Lawson, PC, on behalf of Elias and Leanne Nimmer, the owners, to permit a street setback of 17.5 feet to the deck instead of 21 feet to the deck as required to South Kent Street, regarding a new rear deck addition to an existing one-family detached dwelling on a corner lot in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 2255 South Kent Street within the Arlington Ridge Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions, and please note that we have additional speakers for this item.
Thank you, Mr. Goldberg. Do we have any questions on the use permit version of this request for staff? Hearing none. Mr. Lawson, do you want to speak further?
Very briefly, I'd like to point out that the deck is set back even further from the street than the house currently is. We're not altering the lower deck, which I think alleviated a concern expressed last time. And the staff, as usual, has done a great job of, surveying the neighborhood and finding comparable situations. That's really all I have to say.
Ms. Crosby.
So, but the lower deck will still be there.
Yes, and that's closer than the proposed deck.
But the need for a variance arises because this deck goes back farther than this may be a staff question, but because the deck extends further from the house.
The
then-
additional deck is bigger.
Yeah,
Right.
okay.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? I assume we just addressed that. Discussion with the board, or if someone would like to make a motion?
There's speakers?
I don't think we have a speaker, right?
There's one speaker.
Oh,
Christopher
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Sorry, I thought you said, I heard you wrong. Mr. Hughes? Anything further? Okay. We have, the speaker has waived their speaker.
All right.
So I leave it.
I'll make the
Ms.
motion.
McCroskey.
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution approving use permit V1200924UP1, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report.
Second.
A motion made by Ms. McCroskey, seconded by Ms. Freshman. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call the roll. Ms. Malice,
Aye.
Ms. Freshman,
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey,
Aye.
Mr. Kumana.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion for this use permit passes 5-0. Good luck. Mr. Goldberg, can you call the third case, please?
Yes, Mr. Kaplan. The next item is case number V-12016-24-UP-1, carryover and revised, a use permit request by Gerardo Perez on behalf of Matthew Welch and Akiko Seijisaka, the owners, to permit a rear setback of 15.8 feet to the porch, 14.7 feet to the porch eaves, instead of 21 feet to the porch, 19.5 feet to the porch eaves, as required, regarding a new rear screen porch to an existing one-family detached dwelling in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 1610 North Monroe Street within the Cherrydale Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions, and there are no speakers or supplemental materials for this item.
Thank you, Mr. Goldberg. Ms. McCroskey.
Yeah, do we have any understanding of why this structure was approved by building permit in 2015, since it doesn't appear to meet the zoning standards?
Let me check on that.
Okay.
No, we don't have an understanding of how that became
Okay.
the way it is.
Yeah, there was nothing in the staff report, so that just appears to potentially have been an error, but that's what's existing now.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Is the applicant with us
Yes, virtually.
virtually? Mr. Welch.
Hello, this is Roberto Perez on behalf of
Mr. Perez, the agent. Sorry. Would you like to speak to the application?
Yes, I do. First, I'd like to thank the board and the BZA, the staff, for taking their time to review this project. We were here a couple of months ago, and at that time, we found out that the home that we're talking about had this deck, which appears to be, non-conforming in nature, but it was built along with the home, and there was no real documentation. We could see why. And with the proposal that we had at that time, it was to increase the deck size to build a screened porch. However, the feeling was that, making an already non-conforming deck bigger wouldn't be a good thing and would not be in harmony with the rest of the neighborhood. So the feeling was for us to go ahead and propose a new application to not change the footprint of the existing deck. That way, to not increase any of that footprint of this non-conforming structure. But we do want to state that the deck to build a screen porch would need to be reinforced. So essentially, we would have to dismantle it and rebuild it back up to meet standards and codes to hold the new weight of the roof and the walls. So what we do thank the board and the staff again for taking their time to review this. I'm open to any questions or concerns of yours.
Thank you, Mr. Perez. Do my colleagues have questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Malice.
Mr. Perez, can you repeat the part about having to rebuild? Under what circumstances would you have to rebuild?
Oh, okay. So the deck right now, we would have to dismantle it to reinforce it in order to hold the new structure, yes, the roof and the walls, that we have to hold the new weight. So by us, deconstructing it, we would have to essentially build a new deck of the same footprint. So it wouldn't get it would be the exact same footprint that it is now, but we would essentially have to rebuild that deck in order to hold the new structure. And,
But-
when go ahead.
So you would have to rebuild the deck to facilitate the screen porch.
Yes, essentially, that's what we're going to be doing. In order to meet the county's building codes, we have to take it apart, reinforce it, put it back together. So essentially, yes, we're going to be rebuilding it, but it's going to be the same piers. Everything's going to be exact same location. The landing steps, everything's going to be exactly the same.
And maybe it's a question for staff. How much over is this deck to what would be allowed by right?
.8 feet versus 21 feet.
So
It's
it's
about 5 feet.
5. So
Five.
the deck as proposed has a dimension of
The deck itself is 12 by 16 right now.
12 by 16, and if it was built conforming, it would be 12 by 11.
A little under 12 by 11,
Yeah.
12 by 10 and 3/4.
12 by. So, this is a case where we're not tied to a choice between perpetuating an error and since it's got to be rebuilt anyway.
So the rebuilding of the deck, we have to reinforce it.
Right.
So you do have to take it apart to do that work. So it's not gonna, if you want to call it a new deck, okay. But we have to do that in order to meet those standards. And when it comes to this home, I'm not really sure. There's other decks, there's other properties that seem to have closer structures with setbacks.
Mhm.
And we checked with the different neighborhoods, and there's actually 7 letters of support stating that there will be, no problems there with as far as the neighbors go. And it will not interfere with any more water runoff or, light noise pollution. We're really trying to continue to have that same neighborhood compatibility is what we're talking about. Since last time it was kind of up in the air that it may not be compatible. This way, since we're going to be leaving it at the same size, staff recommended the approval of that being compatible. And but we do want to definitely make the board comfortable with decisions that are being made.
I'm just looking for the.
Can I ask a question of staff? If this board denies this use permit, what's the status of the deck? Is it going to be grandfathered in, for lack of a better term, or is staff going to have an issue with the current deck?
It's just going to be an existing nonconformity.
Thank you.
But technically, it won't be a legal non-conforming deck because it was never met the ordinance when it was first built. Although maybe the permit does something to it. I don't know. And when did the applicant buy the property? When did they move to the property?
Hello, this is Mr. Welch. That would be in 2017.
Okay, that's close enough. Thank you.
For me, this is a tough one. This is kind of a bubble case for me because all of the comparable, there are not a lot of comparables as by the chart, right? They're all over 500 feet away to this one. And the most comparable is 500, 2 of them are 570 feet away. So this is a tough one for me. It also backs up to the highway, right? So
May I speak, Mr. Welch?
I'm sorry, what was that?
May I go ahead and speak? This is Mr. Welch.
Very briefly.
Just pointing out to your point, the staff report indicated that they found it difficult to find.
I'm sorry, who's
part of the reason? Mr. Welch is speaking. The owner.
He's the contractor for the applicant.
are you the contractor or the owner?
No, I'm the owner, Mr. Welch.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, I couldn't tell who was speaking.
Oh, no, that's fine. My apologies. I could only dial in. That's my fault. I just wanted to point out the staff report also indicated that given the amount of parkland on the highway below us, that I forget exactly the wording, but half of the area that's looked at is in fact parkland, and so you're looking at less comparable number of houses compared to what you would be looking at. And I think the report mentions that there was some trouble finding exact matches.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Colleagues.
I'll just say I feel like I'm undoing my grumpy approach all in one evening. But my view of this is that because that porch is there now, it's consistent with what's in the neighborhood. And rather than have the applicant potentially continue to live with this size deck, non-conforming, and to have it fixed up would be a good thing. And therefore, I am willing to support it also because of kind of the location of this property, not being not being surrounded by other residences.
That did not sound too grumpy to me.
No, I'm undoing my reputation for grumpiness, but all in one evening tonight.
Okay. Would you like to make a motion?
I move that the BZA adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request number, is it V1201624 UP1 with conditions.
Would anyone like to second that?
Second.
A motion by Ms. McCroskey, seconded by Ms. Freshman. Is there any further discussion?
So,
Alice?
yeah, I will support this because what I was weighing was, do we perpetuate an error versus is there any real harm here given how this is cited? The harm is a potential precedent that, it will be used that for some future BZA who won't understand how this came about and why we were more lenient here than we ordinarily would. But I am leaning in the direction that the harm here is not substantial.
Thank you, Ms. Malice. Any further? I will call the roll. Ms. Malice?
Aye.
Ms. Freshman?
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey?
Aye.
Mr. Kumana?
Aye.
Chair votes no. A motion passes 5-1.
4-1.
Thank you very much. 4-1.
I know.
Nice try.
I'm expanding. I want to play both sides. Item number 4, Mr. Goldberg, I believe.
Yes. The next case is case number 12030-24-VA-1. This is a variance request by Alistar and Christina Campbell, the owners, to permit a total main building footprint of 3,679 square feet instead of 2,772 square feet as permitted regarding a new screen porch addition and deck addition to an existing one-family detached dwelling in the R10 and R6 zoning district on the premises known as 5119 Yorktown Boulevard within the Yorktown Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution denying the variance. An alternative resolution and conditions have been provided should the BZA see fit to approve the application as advertised, and we have no speakers or supplemental materials for this item.
Thank you, Mr. Goldberg. Do my colleagues have questions for staff?
I do.
Ms. McCroskey?
Does, I understand that the recommendation for denial is based on the interpretation that the most restrictive part of the ordinance applies when we have split zoning as we do on this property. So my question is this a consistent determination by the zoning office that they've made over the years when they apply things to split zoned properties?
Yes, especially for permits. That's how the zoning plan reviewers review it.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further? Is the applicant with us?
Yes.
Would you like to speak to your application?
Microphone good? Thank you, board. Thank you, staff, for all the work.
Can you introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah, sure. Hi.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Alistair Campbell. I'm the owner of the property.
Thank you.
Thank you to the board and the staff for the work preparing for this evening. A couple of comments in no particular order. I'm a 47-year resident of Arlington County, so appreciate all that you guys do for us. I moved to this property from inside the county, and it's become our new residence as of March of last year. I really appreciate the question from Ms. McCorsky because we feel like there is some atypical components here, which is the split zoning on the property. We do understand that we are subject to the strictest enforcement by the letter, which is if R6 is more restrictive than R10, that's our lot coverage and main building footprint and vice versa. When we look at the property, we see that it is much more akin to the R10 properties that are in the neighborhood. That again is anecdotal, but when you look at the lot size, we're well over the 10,000 feet. We're almost 14,000 square feet. So we again don't see this deck and addition being a major impact because it is in line with what we would consider to be the R10 properties. Again, our opinion. We also see when we've looked at the restrictions, or if you will, the qualifications for R10, that we are within the tolerance or very close within 1 percentage point of this being approved without variance if we were considered to be an R10 property. So I want to point those things out because I think there again is an atypical nature to this property and it is split down the middle. But when you look at it compared to others, it definitely leans more towards that R10 layer or R10 designation than the R6. And again, I'd let staff comment on that if they have additional comments. Couple of other things that I think are worth pointing out. 5 of our neighbors, all adjacent to us, were supportive of this, supportive of the addition, and agreed, I guess, with our sentiment that it's not going to directly impact visibility or in any way impact how the neighborhood looks. The reason for that is the deck is completely behind the house, so there's no impact to the front. The last comment that I'll make, and then obviously I'll take any questions or please feel free to provide feedback. The property on the front side of the house has a 3-lane road in front of it that is high traffic. It's Metrobus, Art Bus, Yorktown High School, etc. Because of that, there is no usable outside space on the property that has any privacy at all except in the rear of the house. I know that doesn't maybe technically qualify for the hardship, but if you consider that as part of the overall package of what we're talking about, the only private family space that we would have on the property is where we're looking to build the addition and the deck. So that's the comments I have. Please feel free to ask any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
No, I do have another question for staff.
Question for staff?
So the way I read the staff report as a whole, if this property was, and I think the applicant said this maybe, but if this property was zoned R10, this could be done by right.
That's correct. They would be in the coverage limits if it was an R10 property, solely an R10 property.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further discussion? I
happy to jump in. I may be taking over from Ms. McCroskey here on the grumpiness scale. To me,
Welcome to it.
to me, we have a rule. And I, whether we like the rule or not, whether the applicant likes the rule or not, it's not our place simply to ignore the rule if there's no other factors to consider. And to me, this is a case where the applicant would like the rule to be different, but it is the rule as it stands. And the course of action would be with the legislative side of things and not with the BZA.
Thank you, Ms. Mellis.
Yeah, I agree with Miss Malice. I do. It gives me a little heartburn because of the questions I've raised, as you can see. But if that's the consistent, longstanding interpretation by the zoning administrator, then that is what we need to follow.
And I'll just point out that if we look at the map, the smaller section of this property is actually the R10, not the R6, right? So, you know, if I squint, I can't even make the argument that the bigger half is R10. So let's go with that. Right. I think that this is an issue that for the county board to take up, and that my view is we don't have the authority to overrule the. I mean, we essentially would be redrawing the district maps, which is prohibited by the Virginia statute.
I agree.
Discussions with the board.
Discussions with the board. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm
Ms.
happy to
Malice.
make a motion.
Please.
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution denying the variance V-12030-24-VA-1.
Second.
A motion by Ms. Malice and seconded by Ms. Freshman for denial as advertised. Is there any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Malice,
Aye.
Ms. Freshman,
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey,
Aye.
Mr. Kumana.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion for denial passes 5-0. Mr. Goldberg, sorry, I was about to say Bowen. Can you please call the next case?
Yes, the next case is V-12031-24-VA-1, the variance request by William B. Lawson on behalf of Jordan Jarrett and Megan Borak, the owners, to permit the construction of a new one-family dwelling on a non-conforming lot measuring 4,763 square feet instead of 5,000 square feet as required, regarding a new one-family dwelling proposed to replace the existing dwelling on a lot which does not comply with the minimum lot area requirements in the R15-30T zoning district on the premises known as 1137 North Stewart Street within the Ballston, Virginia Square Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the variance with conditions, and note there is supplemental material for this case that came in after the packets were assembled and printed, which includes a letter of support and a map showing neighborhood outreach efforts. And please note, we also have additional speakers who signed to speak on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Goldberg. Do my colleagues have questions for staff on this item?
I do.
Go, please, Ms. McCroskey.
So I note that there's a very early plat of this property, which shows that it contains 2 lots, but more recent plats and surveys of the property do not show it as 2 lots. So was this lot at some point consolidated into a single lot, or those 2 lots consolidated into a single lot? And I don't care when, if that's the history, I want to make sure it's 1 lot today. Okay, thank you.
Anything further?
I do have a question,
Malice.
but I can't find the reference. So I'm just gonna pass until I find the exact sentence in the staff report.
You will circle back. Is the applicant with us or virtually? Mr. Lawson, sorry, you're right in front of me.
Again, for the record, I'm William B. Lawson, Jr. I represent the applicant. There is language in the zoning ordinance, and it allows undersized lots and underwidth lots if created prior to 1950 and under one ownership, to have a single-family house. But that is limited to the R districts, R5 through R20. It is not allowed for some of the higher density districts. I believe the reason why it was set up this way was to allow the BZA to review these few examples that come along and make sure that a single family home is appropriate. In 2017, I obtained a variance for Elena Keith, and that was went back and forth to the BZA. I think a couple of the older members might remember that was a lot of only 4,350 square feet, zoned RA 818. So this lot was short on area. She requested a bunch of setbacks, and ultimately the board only approved the variance to allow the lot to be built. Just last month, you had a variance for, and I'm going to probably mispronounce it, Simming Lu, for an average lot width of 48 feet instead of 50 as required. That's zoned R27, and you all granted it. And in the dicta of the staff report, it indicated that there had only been two other examples comparable in this area, and they were in 1991 and 2018. In this case, we have 4,763 square feet, 5,000 is required. No other relief is being sought. The balance of the development will comply with the ordinance, and this lot is zoned R1530T. So we see that on occasion in districts allowing for higher density that people want to build a single family house, and often it's because the current home has become old and obsolete. The BZA has been typically granting these, not allowing other deviations from the zoning ordinance unless that it's been carefully reviewed and is appropriate. Now, the zoning history for this area is unique. I believe it was either R5 or R6, I'm not sure, prior to 1978. And the county board on its own motion rezoned this whole area to R1530T. This was based upon a Gluck amendment done in 1977 that addressed development along the whole entire Rosslyn-Boston corridor. And this was to establish an edge or a buffer preserving the north side of Washington Boulevard as being single family. In 1979, 1980, the Orange Line was open in Arlington, and it ended at Boston until it was ultimately extended. Now, the staff has applied the test for a variance, and they've indicated how this property complies. I'm not going to go ahead and repeat this, but I do want to point out that when R1530T was created and the county board amended this area, zoned it R1530T, and created R1530T, at that time, it referenced any and all uses as regulated and permitted under R5. So prior to the adoption of the now current ordinance, I think this would have probably been done by right. And my applicant tells me that they were originally told by zoning it could be done by right. And then we're told, oops, sorry, you need a variance. So that's why we're here tonight. I guess we can say that, the zoning was done by the board, not by an applicant, and it's been a single family for 90 years. I think that the owners, either Jordan or Megan, should probably run for the county board, given all of the statements of support that they've obtained. Thank you. I'll be happy to answer questions.
Microphone. Mike, the mic.
Mr. Lawson, you mentioned neighborhood support. I don't see any neighborhood support from the property that is to the rear of them. Do you know anything about that?
To the rear, did you all have any luck to the rear, or is that the rental one? Come on forward. Come on. State your name and then.
Hi, I'm Megan Borak. I'm one of the property owners. To the rear of us, I believe it was ending in 40.
4214.
Yes, we got one of those statements of support.
It's in your package? Did I overlook it?
Is that supplemental? I don't know. I'm sorry, I didn't personally submit it. My paralegal did.
Yeah, I missed it, so I'll search some more.
I have 4214 and 4210
You found them?
checked off.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, I was going to say,
Oh,
not now.
they'll call you.
Anything further?
No.
Ms. Ryan?
I just want to add a clarification to the question asked earlier. It's actually it's parts of 2 lots. It hasn't been consolidated, but it's under 1 ownership. Just to provide clarification, it hasn't been consolidated.
And it doesn't need to be built on like this?
I think it's just the variance that it would need for the underset because of
I
the
know like
undersize.
in the past, we've seen that come before us to be, people ask for the variance first in order to be consolidated. That seems odd to me that you can build on 2 lots that are not consolidated into a single lot.
I think
Mr. Chairman, it's done all the time.
Okay.
In fact, the Lou variance that I referenced was also 2 lots.
Okay.
One of the surveys, Carol, I hunted for the same thing in preparation, and one of the notes, it indicates that it's part of, and that it references the 2 lots. I can
Yeah.
try to find that if it.
I guess my ultimate question is, so could they put, say, a duplex on, the 2 lots, which would be
Hardship.
consistent with the, it would be consistent with the zoning and meet the policies of the R1530T if there's 2 lots, but I don't know what the minimum lot size is in R1530T for a
That's an important
duplex.
point because it speaks to hardship.
Speaks to hardship. That's right.
So I found the question I was going to ask. I know we got staff checking one thing, maybe Ms. Ryan can check the other one. The top of the second page references Article 16, Section 1632B, non-conforming use of land. And it says non-conforming use of land, parentheses, when no main building is involved, end paren. Now, I wondered how that is relevant if in fact we have a main building involved.
I don't think it's relevant, and that's why we're seeking the variance to bring it into compliance. That would be, if we were arguing that we have a grandfather lot and a right to build, then that would come into play.
So what is the meaning of when no main building is involved? It seems to suggest that something else would apply, not this section.
I don't know that I have that section.
Are you, Megan? Ms.
I
Ryan,
think-
are you following?
Alex may have a question.
Did you have Mr. Kumana, please?
Mr. Chairman, I apologize if this question is
Never.
too basic, but
No.
do we have other examples of single-family homes or variance requests along the Orange Line corridor for homes less than in a square foot lot less than 5,000?
We probably don't because in variances are supposed to be one-off and not precedential, right? So we don't base our decision on variances on previous variances granted. We do that for use permits. That makes sense?
Yes.
I found the language that you were talking about,
Right.
Ms. Malice, and it talks about the non-conforming use of land. And then it says, Any future such use of land shall be in conformity with the provision of this zoning ordinance. This variance,
So,
if
Mr. Lawson,
granted, puts it into conformance.
but the question is why there's a parentheses where no main building is involved. In this case, we have a main building.
Well, if we tear it down, I guess there's no main building. I don't know why that's there.
That's what I,
significance is.
because it would suggest that something else applies if there is a main building involved.
I'm sorry.
Yes,
Can
staff.
can I get caught up? What language are you looking at?
So on page 2 of the staff report,
Oh, okay.
staff, helpfully gives us
Right.
zoning language, and it's the top of page 2, Article 16. It's given to us as perhaps a rule that is relevant here, but I'm not understanding it because it seems to apply when no main building is involved.
Steven's online and he wrote the
Okay.
report.
That would be great. Mr. Rissy?
Mr. Rissy, and his hand is up.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Lawson actually answered this correctly. What we're talking about here is removing a main building and building a new one. So there is a portion of time in which there will not be a main building on the property. And to try and answer Ms. McCroskey's question, if that is still unanswered, semi-detached dwellings aren't actually allowed in the R1530T, I believe. So in this case, the report shows that the one-family dwelling and all other allowed uses require 5,000 square feet of land area. So there is no other form of use that they could build by right.
Yeah,
She
thank
just
you.
came to that conclusion on her own, right?
And it appears that duplexes require 4,370 square feet or something, and in fact, are only allowed by special exception. But they require more than these would have as well.
I think it's a 4.1, isn't it? To do a duplex, because I remember one in Boston where they did a 4.1 for a duplex.
I was just at that page in the ordinance. I'm not sure, but it does require a special exception of some sort. Maybe a site plan, maybe a use permit.
Mm-hmm.
But
So that answered my question as well.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Malice?
I am persuaded that there is a genuine hardship here regarding the use of this land, and I am happy to make a motion when the time comes, if the time is now.
I sense we are ready for that.
I just want to know we have speakers for this item as well.
Oh, we have speakers. I am so sorry. I did that again.
Those are
Mr.
additional
Bennick. Miss Bennick. Oh, that's you.
Hi. Hi, I'm here. Can you hear me and see me?
We can hear you, and we're about to see you.
Great. Okay,
There we go.
fantastic. So good evening, Arlington County BZA members and staff. My name is Adrienne Bannock, and I'm a federal government employee. My husband is active duty military, and we've lived in Boston and Crystal City area since 2004, both as homeowners and as renters. Megan and Jordan are extraordinarily kind. They are caring, they are generous, they are extraordinarily humble, and they are very community oriented, and they live and work in Arlington. They are hardworking professionals, service oriented, civic minded, and they care about our little gem here on North Stewart Street. They all and surrounding areas and surrounding streets, including North Stafford Street. So my request is to please allow them to build their single family home and help make our street even more close knit and safe. We homeowners are quite concerned over potential negative impacts if their appeal isn't granted. Abandoned properties provide opportunities for squatters, crime, and etc. in our community. And as you know, Washington Liberty High School is quite close to us. There are high school kids that walk about here all the time on North Stewart and North Stafford Street. If a duplex were to be built versus a single family home, our street already has major parking issues, including in and around fire hydrants and some of the zoning here. Again, already busy here with high school kids, and we are concerned for their safety as well. So please grant this variance for Megan and Jordan and our North Stewart Street community and surrounding areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can you tell us your address? I don't think we caught that. What's your proximity?
Of course, yes. We are 1122 North Stewart Street.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I need the next speaker. Mr. Akkad?
How you doing? My name is Stephen Akkad. My house is at 1118B North Stafford Street. It's behind them, diagonal. It's about like half a block over. Everything that I don't want to repeat what Miss Vanek said. It's just we've met Jordan and Megan, and they're going to be a great addition to the neighborhood. I don't want to take any of your time, but we would love to have them, and we would love to have you accept their appeal. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further from my colleagues?
I was about to make a motion.
Ms. Malice.
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the proposed resolution granting variance V-12031-25-VA-1, subject to the conditions listed.
Second.
A motion by Ms. Malice for approval as advertised, seconded by Ms. Freshman. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call the roll. Ms. Malice.
Aye.
Ms. Freshman.
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey.
Aye.
Mr. Kumana.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion to grant this variance passes 5-0. Good luck. Mr. Goldberg, can you call the next case, please?
Yes, Mr. Kaplan. The next case is case number V-12032-25-UP-1. It's a use permit request by Cook Bros on behalf of Eric Parker and Sarah Lick, the owners, to permit a street setback of 16.8 feet to the building wall, 15.8 feet to the building eave, instead of 25 feet to the building wall, 21 feet to the building eave, as required from North Galveston Street, regarding a new second-story addition to an existing one-family detached dwelling on a corner lot in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 5332 2nd Street North within the Arlington Forest Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions, and note there is supplemental material for this case that came in after the application packets were assembled and printed, which includes an email from the applicant, an email of support, and a petition of support.
Thank you, Mr. Goldberg. Do my colleagues have questions for staff?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Malice.
So there was a variance granted in 1963 that allowed a 16.8 setback. And the actual measurement that we find today is it's 17.5. Or do I have it backwards? I think I have it backwards.
Yeah, it's reversed.
Yes, it's reversed. So they granted 17.5. It's actually less than that, 16.8. My question is, would they have required a use permit if it had conformed to the 17.5?
They did have certain plans and everything showing that it was going to be a garage with a story above. So building a second story above a BZA variance, I think building an addition above a prior BZA variance when they had specific plans would probably necessitate them come back.
Either case, they would have needed a use permit. So the discrepancy is not the relevant part of the discussion.
Megan, you need to turn on your microphone, I think.
Oh, sorry.
No problem. It just was soft.
Thank you. Anything further? Is the applicant with us? I see. Yep. Come on down.
Certainly am. Oh. Yeah, I'm Steve with Cook Brothers. I think the owners are actually online. I was just here in case they
had technical problems.
Before you start, I do have one question of staff. So I noticed at the bottom of page 2, there was a reference to, in the almost last line, it says that is proposed to be a new second rear addition, that's proposed to be situated 15.8 feet from the right side lot line. So I'm sorry, but that's not part of that's not part of the use permits being requested here, because that's conforming. At one point, I thought maybe that was supposed to be 16.8.
I think it's referring to the eaves. It's 15.8 feet to the eaves, 16.8 to the building.
Oh, 1 foot eaves over, I see. Thank you.
Mr. Barker.
Yes, good evening. Eric Barker. I'm an owner of the property listed on the application here. Appreciate your consideration tonight. This was always when we bought the house in 2022, an addition we had planned for extra livability for our family. So appreciate your consideration. Happy to answer any questions or clear up any concerns that you need.
Thank you. Do my colleagues have questions for the applicant? If not, discussion with the board. Anything, anyone? Someone like to try a motion? Or are we just working?
We're working.
We're working, okay. No rush.
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Are we
So,
ready?
Um,
Cross screen.
Is there a change to the setbacks? This is just,
I think we're just going up over top.
yeah, okay.
I think.
That's,
It seems like a complicated
it's
version
just
of
going
going over
above.
top.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
That's at least my understanding.
Then I'm ready for a motion.
Is that correct, staff?
They're just building above the existing wall.
Yeah, okay. Ms. Freshman, go ahead.
Case V-12032-25-UP1. I move to adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Second.
Thank you. A motion for passage as advertised by Ms. Freshman, seconded by Ms. Malice. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call the roll. Ms. Malice.
Aye.
Ms. Freshman.
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey.
Aye.
Mr. Kumana.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion to grant this use permit passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Have a good night.
I was just trying to figure out what was wrong with it. Couldn't find anything.
Nothing wrong, right?
Couldn't find anything.
Mr. Goldberg, can you call the next use permit, please?
Yes, Mr. Kaplan. The next case is case number V-12033-25-UP-1, a use permit request by Jay Shalati on behalf of Leanne Palmgren and Joyce Coleus, the owners, to permit a left side setback of 9.2 feet to the building wall, 6.7 feet to the building eve instead of 15.2 feet to the building wall, 11.2 feet to the building eve as required, to permit a right side setback of 5.5 feet to the roof eve instead of 6 feet to the roof eve as required, and to permit a total aggregate side yard width of 15 feet instead of 21 feet as required with regard to left side building additions and a new sunroom roof to an existing one-family detached dwelling in the R8 zoning district on the premises known as 1536 North Jefferson Street within the Westover Village Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution partly granting and partly denying the use permit request with conditions. granting the requested right side setback reductions and denying the requested left side setback reductions. An alternative resolution has been provided should the BZA see fit to approve the use permit request as advertised, and there are no speakers or supplemental material for this item.
Thank you, Mr. Goldberg.
Question?
Questions, Ms. Freshman?
Is it correct that the extension of the addition in both directions is wider than the existing? Is that the way you read it? It looks to me as if, and so the setback relief on the left is what's in contention?
That's correct. The front and rear are both by right.
Okay, but because they're making it wider as well as extending it in both directions, that's the issue.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
And the roof on the right side, that's being replaced.
Right.
So,
Ms. Mellis.
so what I understand is that right now the existing garage has a 9.6 foot setback. And the proposal is to convert the garage to living space and extend it to past the front of the house.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Goldberg. I am looking at the chart on page 4, individual side yard and aggregate side yard setbacks. And I notice missing from this chart, and this is not a criticism by any means, but I don't see which is right and which is left. Am I missing that for the side yard setbacks?
No, you're correct. Those aren't noted there.
And then so then the obvious follow-up to that is, then I don't see if we have any comparables that have both the right and left encroachments. So because I only see one measurement for each of these, can I assume that that is because it's only one and not both? Or would you have just pulled the minimum?
I think you would have pulled the minimum, and then the aggregate would show what the minimum would be on each side combined. So that's where he has the second column for the aggregate.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit, I think it's a little bit tough for us to judge without that broken out, because staff is recommending a right and left with different recommendations. So it's kind of tough for us to be able to judge compatibility without more information, I think. That's just, I won't say we, it's difficult for me.
So you're saying you would like to know what the comparable is on a right side
On both right and left.
and left.
And then are any of these having encroachment on both?
Okay.
Well, okay.
Go ahead.
No, I guess I can see where if you do the subtraction, you know what the other one is. And the fact is, which is supposed to be 8 and which is supposed to be 10 doesn't matter and can be shifted. So it doesn't, I feel like it's enough information.
Except that, yeah, but just to be correct, in this case, the aggregate is 21. Should be 21 for this zoning district.
Right.
Thank you.
I guess I can do the math on the fly. Thank you.
Yeah. Based on what's before me, I tend to support the staff recommendation, but I think you have a point that, we don't have the detail. A right side setback of 9.2 sounds good, but sorry, that's not the right side.
Right side,
Right side,
5.8.
the right side is 5.8.
And let's hear from I think we can hear from the applicant.
Okay.
Come on down, please. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jay Schlotty. I'm the applicant for this project. It really is broken up in those two different sides. So the right side is the easier one. They're really just constructing a new roof over the existing sunroom. Basically, it's just a more attractive space. So there's no physical change to the dimension to the right side property line. Now on the left side, it's a little bit different, and it's a little bit confusing when we look at all the numbers that are actually on the plat that we've provided. So that 9.2 actually goes to a water table. So it's just a 2-foot high brick table where the topography here is such that we're rising into the ground just a little bit at that level. So we do have there's a part that is encroaching more than the current garage, but it's only at the first 2 feet of elevation. After that, the wall that rises up that we're proposing is at the existing 9.6 that is found on the existing garage. So if we go to that wall, our aggregate setbacks haven't changed. The other thing, it's just a little confusing looking at things and reading through the zoning report, is that it does appear that there are properties that are approximately the same length that do encroach similar amounts. And just looking at the map provided in the materials, I see 2 properties on Kenilworth, one of them a rear neighbor, and that would be 1533. And then just a couple doors down at 1521. Both of those appear to be structures about that long and encroaching about that tight to one side. Just looking at the photos, available on Google Maps, both of those are full 2-story structures. The design of this project is actually a combination of 1-story, 1.5-story, and the rearmost portion of it is 2-story. So we have purposely kept the portion that faces the public at a lower elevation, so it was actually a less impactful. And part of it, we're using the existing structure as our precedent so that the ridge height has not increased. So we have not increased the overall height of the structure, although we are adding more mass. And I'd say the other thing, just looking at the map, not that unusual in Arlington, but yeah, the setbacks are all over the place. There looks like a half a dozen or so that have a foot or less even.
Although the tax map boundaries are not often accurate though, so we can't, we can't go off.
I wasn't measuring.
Yeah, I mean, we can't, like, I'm looking at 1531, it looks like it's on, but
I know.
if staff has a plat, they would have put that on there. Do we have questions for this applicant?
So, well, just a comment. It does bother me that, the garage, the setback for the garage is being used as the guide for the setback for the whole building. This constructed in 1950. I don't know, is that before or after the ordinance was passed? I mean, it's about the same time, but so that's one comment, is that I do have some concern about that. The other thing, I was trying to do the math, is if the setback for the sunroom is as it is, and that's 5 foot 8 inches.
This is the right side setback.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm saying for the sunroom, it's 5.8.
Yes.
Okay. Then the setback for the left would have to be like 15. So that's quite a ways off.
I'm trying to find that aggregate chart.
So if
Yeah.
it's the aggregate is 21 feet required. So it's 21 minus 5.8.
$15.2.
15.2, right?
Right.
So that would be what would be required on the left side. So we're from a 15.2, the applicant is asking to go down to 9.2, which is a considerable ask.
I can address it if there is a question about it.
What would you address?
Oh, it's part of it, and I think zoning already addressed some of it in their report, is that a aggregate setback in this neighborhood of 15 foot or less, which I know is not compliant, is not uncommon. Additionally, the garage is not a detached structure. It is a attached house. I know it's a garage, but this isn't, we're not using like a separated garage to create a precedent. This is connected to the house. It would, you know,
Yeah.
it would, if I built this now, that garage would be subject to house setback, not garage setback.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I understand your point. Nevertheless, it's
All right, I just wanted to clarify. That's
right.
all.
No,
Thank you.
nevertheless, it's we're taking that whole garage width and running it the length of, so that's my comment right now. I think staff has a point.
Speak, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Freshman, please.
Okay, I understand on the right side that we're talking about an eave. And on the left, the addition of 9.6 is the same, other than this water thing, whatever you call it. It just strikes me that when you take the existing left and right, it's not that much change. I understand the staff's point of view and I could support that. It's just that if the interpretation is such that the extension front and back is still at the width of the existing, and so the setback remains at 9.6, it's far less dramatic than it might appear otherwise.
Yeah, I have my concern is that you've taken a 9.6 that is in the back of the property and taken up the entire side yard with that, such that from the street, it's just going to look like a much bigger house with very little on either side. And I think that to me is what makes it problematic in terms of consistency with the neighborhood and with zoning policies and all that. It almost seems like, this is just the wrong place to put this. But that's it comes down to a judgment call in many ways on this one.
I can address that question if there is one specifically, as far as location, but.
I
yeah,
I don't have a specific question.
That's okay.
It's my concern is it just looks like a big, huge additional encroachment into that left yard that concerns me. Is it the left? I don't know which is which.
Mr. Goldberg? The staff's recommendation is partly granting, partly denying, partly granting the right and partly denying the left. I assume that there also has to be relief for the aggregate setback. Is there a staff recommendation for the aggregate setback? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah. I believe if we're recommending denial for the left side setback, that the aggregate would also be included.
Thank you.
So from my point of view, what Ms. McCroskey described is also what struck me as the fact that not only are we encroaching more into the setback, we're bringing that encroachment even forward of the existing house. So I don't know if the I don't know the sort of the temperature of the board here, but one avenue would be for us to consider requesting the applicant to show us a different plan that did not extend forward of the main building. But I don't know if that's something that we want to entertain. Obviously, other permutations would be to narrow the addition or both. And so that would suggest a deferral for the applicant to consider whether those changes would be practical.
Thank you, Ms. Malice. Is that something that you think the applicant would be interested in, or should we push forward and see where
Okay, I
our
can
colleagues
answer
are?
that. Yeah, yes, we could pursue it. But actually, at this hearing, I would prefer if we just voted on the staff recommendation and deny the left side. In part, the roof on the sunroom is in poor
We
repair.
want to move forward.
We don't want to wait. That's it's not for anything that was said. It's just a practicality matter.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's a good point.
So I need to do that one for him. I don't want to rebuild the roof to tear it off to rebuild the roof.
Right.
That's why.
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution, partly granting and partly denying use permit V1203325 UP1, granting the requested right side setback reductions and denying the requested left side setback reductions, subject to the conditions listed.
Second.
Oh, go ahead.
He
spoke first.
I heard three at once. I'm going to give it to our new member. A motion for passage is advertised, partly approving, partly denying, as staff recommends, by Ms. McCroskey, seconded by Mr. Kumana. Is there any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Malice.
Aye.
Ms. Freshman.
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey.
Aye.
Mr. Kumana.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes for partial approval 5-0.
Thank you for your help.
Thank you. Mr. Goldberg, can you call our next case?
Yes, Mr. Kappa, the next case is case number V-12034-24-UP-1, a use permit request by Snell Heating and Air on behalf of Charles and Christine Sabatino, the owners, to permit a street setback of 1 foot from 6th Street South instead of 25 feet as required, regarding an existing generator on an existing one-family detached dwelling on a corner lot in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 531 South Jefferson Street within the Glen Carlin Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions, and note there is supplemental material for this case, which is a letter of support.
Thank you, Mr. Goldberg. No speakers?
No speakers.
No speakers. Do we have questions for staff on this item?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Malice.
a little confused about the sequence of events here. Is this installation existing?
That's correct. It's currently there.
How did it come about to be built? Or is that a question for the applicant?
So it was originally applied for, the plat that they submitted showed the proposed generator in a street easement, and I can just verify that on the plat. Yeah. And so after some discussions and we found a plat that showed that, I believe the easement was vacated, and so they were able to proceed with the BZA request. But after we originally had the plat that showed it in the easement, they went ahead and constructed it
Without a building permit?
without a building permit.
But not in the easement.
But the easement was vacated, yeah.
Yeah, the easement was vacated, but, all right, but the street is public, but the easement next to the street was vacated. Okay. So it was built without a building permit. There's also a letter from the from the contractor. It's got a date like 2 years ago. Is that the original request that was, then you worked on the plat?
Which page are you referring to, Ms. Malice?
Let's find it.
Yeah, it's a letter from the
Snell.
contractor to us dated 1/4/23.
Yeah, it's a letter, yes.
It's
That's-
page 12 of the materials.
Right, it's to zoning,
It
right?
seems like this has been,
And it's
a long
dated
standing.
1/4/23.
right.
So just trying to get, is that the original when they came in and wanted to build?
That's
it,
correct.
And you told them it's not, it's the easement's vacated, and then they went ahead and built it.
We didn't have the information. The plat we had showed the easement there, so we told them they wouldn't be able to move forward with the BZA. So this is the original statement of justification from before we let them know that information.
Okay. All right, so the applicant, I guess we'll hear from the heating company today. Okay. That's no more questions from me.
Let's hear from the applicant. Is the applicant with us? No, right. You're still, yes, you are the applicant. Yes.
Thank you. And I can't speak to why we hired Snell to do this, and I can't speak to why they screwed up and did this. I can speak to why it makes sense to permit the use permit. My name is Charles Sabatino. My wife and I, who are both retired, have lived at 531 for the last 30 out of the 49 years we lived in Arlington. And we wanted to have a generator as part of our planning to age in place, because we both have issues and having electricity is important. Our house is situated in somewhat of a unique geography. We're right up against Glen Carlin Park really on two sides. And the 6th Street, that short appendix of 6th Street that is at issue here, from what I've been told, actually originally went all the way down to the building that is now the Long Branch Nature Center. It used to be a private residence, I'm told. And when it was closed, this had to be back at least in the 50s, and I'm not sure when, it may have been earlier. That one little stretch of 6th Street was not closed because it is the only access to the back of our house, which is where the garage is. And the garage is built into the house. It's not a separate building. So for the last, and it's also a pretty narrow road, and the house, which is a Rambler built in 1956, somehow is set back only 4 feet from the road. And why that is the case, I have no idea. But that's the situation. And the road has never, in the 30 years that we've lived there, has never really been used for anything other than access to the back of our house. In doing this, you have in the record now 7 letters of support from neighbors who represent just about everybody who's within about a football field of our house, including one from the Civic Association president, Brandon Hemmel. Finally, because of the requirements for where you can put a generator and where we have windows and doors all around the house, I'm told that the only other place that you can put a generator would be on the front lawn side of our front deck, which would pretty much place it just about in the middle of our front lawn, which would be much more of a sound and nuisance and a visual eyesore for the rest of the neighbors. Where it is on the side of the house, along that little appendix of the road, it's either fully or partially blocked from sound and sight from our neighbors. So for those reasons, we respectfully request that you approve it, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
So I do have a question. So I'm looking at an old drawing, but this piece of asphalt that goes along the side of your house
Yes,
is owned by the county.
yes, it's
The
technically part
county
of 6th
road,
Street.
technically. Okay. And so, but then when was the generator put in?
It was put in, I think, in the second half of 2023.
Okay. So it's been there a while.
Well, fall of 2023, if I'm
All right.
not mistaken.
All right. I will just express my grumpiness at the fact that this was put in here and this is kind of, you know, I would want to ask a lot of questions about why it can't go in the back. And I'd also raise some issues, and you don't need to respond to these. It's just me not liking that something got done without a proper review. But I also, you know, wonder whether the noise of a generator, which I guess isn't used very much, it's for emergencies, but why that doesn't have, you know, an adverse effect on people using the park that's next door when it's placed so close to the street and the park. But that's, again, it's me being grumpy.
The park is all woods there, by the way.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Mellish.
So how did this case come to our attention since it was built some time ago? It had to be someone complained or there was an inspection. How did it?
It was initially a BZA application that came into us asking for the relief.
When?
In early 2024.
But I mean, did you ask for it? How did it come about that this case is before us now?
I really don't know. We suddenly got a notice in the mail.
You got a notice that
it was
you were,
going to be before.
did you get a violation notice of some sort?
No. Someone, I don't know whether someone from the county did come by and he asked to see the generator. And I showed it to him. I thought he was going to inspect it. But he said he was with the zoning. And so I gave him a little bit of the history. And then he said, oh, I guess I need to go do a little bit more research. And that's all he said.
So
I said that must have resulted in the wheel turn.
That might not have, that might have been the process of studying this.
Someone followed up from his original application.
Someone complained. Is usually, you know, once something's installed, somebody complained about this generator, and that's how it came to the attention of the county. I mean, unless staff has a different understanding. So I would wonder.
I'm personally not aware of a complaint, but.
Yeah, I understand. You were surprised. Do you know, was there a code, was there an enforcement action on this? Anybody?
Well, they may have just tried to reach out to them and get it corrected before they take an actual I mean, if they then apply to come to the BZA, that they wouldn't give an official notice of violation or anything, I would imagine.
But there must have been, someone must have complained for some reason. That could have been, it could have been the county plowing a street or something.
And one of our zoning plan reviewers, Jillian Cordova, has her hand up. She can probably provide some clarification.
Great.
Ms. Cordova.
Yes, good evening. So when I was doing my acting role in the BZA team, we're trying to check on the applications, the old applications that we have, and one of this particular application was already paid for. So we want to try and do a refund to the applicant because initially we thought they can't go for a BZA because it was located on a easement. Eventually and then we noticed that the generator was already, it appears that it was already installed without a BZA application. And at that time we thought they can't go for a BZA. So I initially asked the inspection division one of our inspectors in zoning to check if that was actually a generator that was installed because it was hard to see it from the GIS map. And they confirmed that it was a generator. And they had an enforcement case that was filed. And after that, We did more research to it and already found out that the easement was vacated and that they can proceed with the BZA application. That's how we added them on the April agenda or March agenda tonight. Because they can now go to the BZA. Initially, we thought they can't. So if this is going to be approved tonight, then the zoning enforcement case would be closed out, and they should be good after that. I hope that clears the dates on the old application.
Excellent summary. Thank you. That they were trying to give you a refund.
No good deed.
So can someone speak to why this can't go in the backyard?
I don't have. I wish I could show you photos of the back of the house, but the back of the house doesn't have more than 3 feet without a window, a door, or a garage door. And I was told by Snell that it has to be at least 5 feet from a window or door.
And there's no rear part of the property where it can go even farther away from the house.
Just about to go there, right?
That's the rear part. Oh, well.
Right, it doesn't have to be close to the house. It could be 10 feet away from the house.
The land behind our house starts to drop off pretty precipitously. And it looks like a big lot, but it's most of the bottom part of the lot has a Chesapeake Bay runoff easement on it.
I mean, like even in this picture, it looks like it, right next to that car, right under the stairs. You could build.
Oh, there you can see.
Right, but it
so
looks like there's a nice spot right at the right of that picture there that it could go right under those stairs.
By the deck.
By the deck, yeah.
By the footing.
By the footing, right.
And this isn't.
The issue may be that you got to get a gas line there.
Yes.
And the gas comes in at the far opposite corner of the house. So it'd be a major construction to get it there.
Right. It is awfully close to the house. I know that it's not relevant to this, but they recommend 5 feet, but a lot of other independent, organizations, recommend a lot farther than that. And considering this is close to the house and then close to other houses and technically a road that, yes, no one uses, but.
Putting it there will make it sound louder to our immediate neighbor on the far side. And also does not make any difference to the sound into the park area. But I think the biggest issue that I would see would be that it would take a lot of construction to get a gas line there.
And I don't know, a question or if staff has any comments, but if this were an air conditioner that were encroaching, staff would probably require it be screened. Right. I mean, I know it's a different ordinance but if an air conditioner encroaches into the allowable encroachment, it has to be screened. And so why would this not have to be screened?
Stephen has his hand up.
Stephen, please. I know that you will have an obvious answer here that I am overlooking.
No, it's okay. This can get confusing. We don't require screening around any mechanical equipment. It's just that screening gets mechanical equipment more of an encroachment than if they don't provide it. In this case, because of the proximity to the side street, the screening would be limited to be no more than 4 feet in height. And so we just weren't sure whether it would be very useful screening. They can't build like a 6-foot fence here because of how close it is to the street, unless you guys want to approve that too. So that's why we didn't actually, we had considered doing a condition of screening, but because of its placement and its proximity to the street, we actually didn't feel that it would be as effective.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Malice?
Question. Have you been in touch with Snell since this all came up?
I had periodically asked them what's the status of it several times. And then had mostly told they would take care of it. But I hadn't heard anything in the last really 12 months.
So is Snell aware that you're here tonight?
I'm pretty sure because all the email correspondence included Snell and myself, and I said I was going to be here.
Don't, I mean, it seems to me they have some liability here, given that they proceeded without a building permit.
I don't know how to respond to that.
In other words, they owe you. Because presumably they told you everything was all right and they were ready to move forward.
I just think they didn't do their research before they jumped into it.
I could make a motion if we're ready.
Please.
So I'm gonna adjust the, I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit V123425 UP1 with an amendment that I will state, subject to the conditions listed. And I would add a second paragraph in the proposed resolution that states, whereas the conditions of this particular property are unusual in that there is very little space on the side of the house, and the property adjoins a street right-of-way and a park on that side. And then continue with the rest of the resolution, but I would simply want to reflect, the one reason I can support this is that this is an unusual property. It does not have the same kinds of effects on others and doesn't allow for the same placement of a generator. So that's why I would support it. And that I would hope would avoid too much precedential value of a decision in this.
I would second the motion, but I would also suggest that there has to be some outreach to the company that installed it with at least a slap on the hand, because we wouldn't even have this situation for this applicant had they not been derelict in their duty and installing something and collecting the funds for it without taking any responsibility at the time or since.
I think that's a good idea.
So a motion as amended made by Ms. McCroskey for approval, seconded by Ms. Freshman. Is there any further discussion?
Yes.
Ms. Malice.
Question. What form would this slap on the hand take? I mean, how do we effectuate that?
Well, I would suggest that perhaps the chairman can discuss with maybe the secretary whether to write such a letter or get a letter written, and it can go out from the chairman. I'd be happy to help write it if that's necessary, but perhaps we can ask for staff's help and see if they are willing to do that.
Staff have a kind of a reaction to that?
I think given discussions in the recent past, we should probably let staff take it back to the zoning administrator and the secretary and have their discussion, and then we can work on getting something out.
I think that would be a good idea. That's the sentiment of the board.
Right.
That there should be some consequence or feedback. to.
At the very least, they should know the results of this case and the penalty that the applicant had to suffer, and the fact that people are paying attention to them.
And at the very least, we've been talking about Snell in not a good light in this case, which will be forever on the zoning website.
Yeah, it would have been better.
Bad marketing.
Honestly, it would have been better if Snell was
We're
here
here,
to
right.
defend themselves,
Right.
because we may be missing some facts on their part as well. So, I can't entirely condemn them, but at this point, given what we know, it appears that they're culpable.
At least for not getting a building permit.
Exactly.
Is there any further discussion?
So motion made by Ms.
Ms.
McCroskey,
McCroskey, seconded by Ms. Freshman.
Okay.
With additional comment. My quick comment is I'm going to be a dissenting vote on this one, only because I think that this should not pass 5-0 with a 1 foot setback to the street right away. And I'll even put streets in quotes. I think it's a bad precedent to set. And I think that there are other options for this generator to go on this property in other locations. That being said, I will call the roll. Ms. Malice.
Aye.
Ms. Freshman.
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey.
Aye.
Mr. Kumana.
Aye.
Chair votes no. Motion to grant this generator passes 4-1 with an amendment.
Okay. And I was just going to say, maybe we should ask that either Brett or Megan could just volunteer to be willing to get back to you, to the chairman, when you've had a discussion and have some understanding of whether the zoning office can write the letter or whether we should plan to do it ourselves.
Will do.
Thank you.
Mr. Goldberg, can you call the next or last use permit?
Yes, Mr. Kaplan. The next case is case number V-12035-25-EP-1, a use permit request by Cook Bros on behalf of Alexander and Alejandro Fernandez Pons, the owners, to permit a left side setback of 9 feet to the building wall instead of 10 feet to the building wall as required, to permit a right side setback of 5.6 feet to the building wall, 5.2 feet to the building eave instead of 10 feet to the building wall, 6 feet to the building eave as required, to permit a total aggregate side yard width of 14.6 feet instead of 18 feet as required. Sorry, I might have skipped lines. And to permit a street setback of 13.3 feet to the building wall, 12.5 feet to the building eave, instead of 25 feet to the building wall, 21 feet to the building eave as required, with regard to 1- and 2-story rear additions, a front foyer, a rear porch addition, and a rear deck addition to an existing single-family detached dwelling in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 716 24th Street South within the Aurora Highland Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions, and there are no speakers or supplemental materials for this case.
Thank you. Do my colleagues have questions for staff?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Malice.
I believe in the applicant's materials, they referred to name change. In other words, the name is different than on the land records.
Ms. Malice, if you could either speak up a little bit or look directly at me when you're talking, so I can hear you.
So in the package, in the applicant's material, they spoke about a name change in the real estate record. And in order to forestall any confusion, they said that they were submitting court records to show that there had been a name change. Do you have that? I don't see the material in the package. I wondered if you have that information.
I'll take a look through. I don't believe so, but let me double check.
You should have 2 court orders from the circuit court right here in Arlington referencing name changes. I can address that directly. My husband's name is Alejandro. My name is Alexander.
Is the applicant's time starting?
Somebody started it.
It looks like it just started.
I do not
I
see
can
those
stop it
court
if you'd
records
like.
in the application materials. I can also check real estate to see what's listed. Yeah, to answer your question, we don't appear to have those documents, and real estate lists the names as Alexander Fernandez and Alejandro Gutierrez Pons.
I did find the record in us in our permit Arlington system. They just weren't made part since they were court orders. We didn't put them on the website for the public thing.
So you have documentation?
We do, yes.
Okay, that's the question.
Thank you. Would you like to start?
So good evening. My name is Alexander Fernandez Pont, and I'm just going to clean that up a little bit for you. My husband's name is Alejandro, and I'm Alexander, and we went for about 20 years without changing our names. But then we had an 8-year-old. Well, we had a kid from birth. And around age 5, he started wondering why we didn't all have the same last name. So we all got them changed. And as my fellow Alexander here will attest to, when we go to the doctor, it's a nightmare because we have to make sure that the doctor's in the right file. And we've already gotten billed the wrong thing to the wrong account on multiple occasions. So we have to keep going by birth date. And here's the thing, we were both born the same year. So it is truly, I can't tell you how many times I've had to have a medical thing reversed with the insurance to get it billed to the right place. But anyway, I digress. We've been living in Arlington for 39 years. We bought that house in 2001. And when we bought it in 2001, we thought this house is perfect. We're never going to have to change anything because we were 34 years old and stupid. And what ended up happening is that time and age, I know I look good, but I'm 57, and disease, catches up with you after a while. And you have to make allowances for that. And the fact that as the 8-year-old gets older, the house gets smaller. And as it gets more difficult for me and my husband to walk around, the house gets smaller. So we have to make allowances for that. And quite honestly, that's why we're here. We're not here for any other reason. I really would like to thank the staff because I wish my staff was as good as your staff. They did a great job in putting this packet together. So I'm just here to answer any questions that you guys might have. Truly, you did an exceptional job.
Thank you.
So I do have a question, and I'm looking at the drawing. Actually, I think it's the one that's up there exactly. I see the 2-story addition, dark gray, and on either side of that is it a little bit of area, maybe 2.5 on one side and 1.8 on the other. That's lighter gray. What does that mean? What is a lighter gray area?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
That's my technical pro coming into
Steve Tinter from
I'm
Cook
the
Brothers.
pretty one.
I see. Okay.
Right.
What that shows is that the second floor actually sets in from the first floor. We tried, when we started doing design work, we always try to push our clients to see, can we do things by right?
You didn't really have to push, right? I mean, come on.
And so originally we designed it to be by right by bringing it in, and the second floor worked, but the first floor we just really couldn't, with some of the accessibility issues that we were trying to deal with, we couldn't quite get the kitchen and the living room to work. So we thought we would leave the second floor inset to minimize the impact on the encroachment. So it's really just the first floor that's encroaching on the sides.
And if you notice, that first floor still stays within the line of the house that was built in 1926.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, honestly, I would have loved a kitchen island, right? But I can't have one because there's no way I can get around it. So, which is why the kitchen is big, empty in the middle the way that it is, so that I can actually walk around in it and get around. When I can't get around in it, I can get around in it. Otherwise, what we end up with on the first floor are these big slots. if we push it back in. And rectangles are very hard to navigate. You know, you really need squares. And that's a problem.
Anything further from my colleagues?
I do have one other question. The extension of the front foyer out a little bit further. You noted that that was, or there's, maybe it's in our documents, maybe it's in your writing, but it notes that that's necessary for potential future disabilities.
Actually, it's getting closer. I'm having a hard time standing right now.
Okay. Well, if you absolutely need to, you should take a seat. But so I guess my question is, was that then designed by some standard for accessibility? Like
Yeah.
there's universal design and stuff like that?
Oh, very much universal design. I mean, we don't have to get into what I do at HUD, but I've been doing it for a very long time. I can't have an open porch like Stacy has next door because we got to be able to enclose it from the elements, right? So the width, again, we're trying to square things out, are so that we can get things like walkers and hopefully not, but wheelchairs inside more easily, and being able to close the door behind us and open the door in front of us once you're in past the threshold of the house. And that's what those designs are for. I mean, there are minimum clearance spaces that you need for all of those things. And honestly, it also facilitates the development of a ramp, should one be required in the future, both in front of it and in back of it. Not dead yet, so, but got a plan. And hopefully never, right? But
right.
With that in mind, we want to keep it open, which is why it's designed in glass. But we got to get rid of those jealousy windows because those are very much 1970, and I got to tell you, they're ugly. So we're going with pretty glass if we can.
Anyone?
Just a general comment. It's a very big addition.
I'm sorry.
I don't think the applicant heard you.
Oh, I just, wow. I'm looking at it and it's a very big addition, there's a
So
lot.
it's designed to.
There wasn't a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
It's a comment. It's a big decision. It's a big addition, and I'm just wrapping my head around how big it is.
You bring me the chair.
You can put the podium down. If you look to your left, it should.
Thank you.
There you go.
Sure.
And then the standing person will have to bend over to speak to the microphone.
This is good.
It bounced off the bottom, I think.
It has a minimum. It has a maximum down.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Freshman.
speaking to the size of the addition, I agree that it's large. However, for that neighborhood, the house is very small. And I think what they're creating is proportionate to modern living. And so I would definitely support the application.
You've seen the houses, huh?
Ms. Freshman, is that a motion I hear?
Sorry? Oh,
Is that-
sure.
Is that
You
a
ready?
motion I hear you making?
If you're ready for me, I'm ready.
Unless anyone objects?
Okay.
We can see how this turns out.
In the case of V 12035-25-UP1, I propose that the motion to adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Second.
Thank you, in a motion for approval as advertised, made by Ms. Freshman, seconded by Mr. Kumana. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I just want to state for the record, my approval of this will not be because we have the same first name as the.
Thank you. Not a required disclosure. Just saying.
I will say that I understand Ms. Malice's point, and it was initially looking at the drawings. It looks like it's doubling the size of the house, and it also goes up. But I also do think that it is pretty consistent with what's there now, and there's a lot of space in the backyard, but yeah, you have to get a good width, and the width is consistent with what's there now. So I think that it's a tough one, but I think ultimately I can support it just because it's a big lot and there is lots of space in the back, and it's not expanding the width.
Thank you. I will just add that normally I would be the one objecting to a project like this that is asking for many items of setback release, but I would just like to commend the applicant's forthcomingness with this board and has gotten me on their side.
Thank you.
And their letter. So it was very, very well done application, I think, and the application supports the need. Nothing further. I will call the roll. Ms. Malice.
Aye.
Ms. Freshman.
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey.
Aye.
Mr. Kumana.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. I believe we have one more case on the agenda that we need to hear tonight, which is a hearing for a dismissal and an appeal.
That is correct. From the administrative portion, the item is V-12021-24-APP-1, carryover for non-payment for unpaid application for 1013 17th Street South within the Arlington Ridge Civic Association.
And Mr. Goldberg, this was deferred by this board a few months ago to give the applicant some time to determine which direction they would like to go in. Is that correct? Is the applicant, do my colleagues have questions about this for staff? Is the applicant with us?
Yes, I am. I'm not sure why my camera isn't showing. I apologize. Can you see me?
No.
We cannot. We see a black screen.
Is it okay if you can't see me?
It is okay. Yes.
Okay. I don't know why my screen isn't working. Hold on, let me try. Sorry, it's not working. Okay. Yes, I was here. May I proceed or?
Yes, please.
Okay. I was here before and I have not paid the fee, and I would like to have that issue reconsidered, or at least state for the record why, so that you can make your decision based on just a few points. As I noted before, the county had indicated there was no deadline to pay the fee. So that kind of undermines the claim that I must now have to pay the fee to preserve my appeal rights. If no deadline exists, then by definition, there's no requirement, it seems, to pay the fee at the time. But even so, the other point was the permit was based on an ordinance that no longer exists. The court invalidated the ordinance upon which the permit was issued, making it void. There's no valid permit. There's nothing to appeal. You can't appeal a voided permit. Requiring the payment of a fee for a void permit is like requiring someone to pay a fee to challenge a law that no longer exists. The fee covering the cost of reviewing the appeal cannot, the board is choosing to hold this hearing. It's not a function of my original appeal. The hearing is about whether a fee is due, not the merits of the fee. So I think the fact that we're having this hearing shouldn't be playing into having to have retroactively impose an obligation to pay. The law doesn't seem to require one to preemptively appeal. Nothing requires that one must have to pay an appeal fee in advance to preserve a right to appeal a future hypothetical reinstatement of the ordinance. Since the permit doesn't currently exist in a legally enforcing way, there's nothing to appeal. A fee should only apply when an appeal is substantively considered. Right now, the permit's void, so there's no substantive appeal. If the ordinance is reinstated, the proper time to pay a fee would be when the appeal is actually viable. Requiring payment now would be procedurally unfair and not sound. There were two other cases, and I know the board had raised those before, but they're distinguishable because those were active cases before the courts. Before the court, they had paid their fee. Before the court had made the ruling, they had paid their fee. You guys were ready to go ahead with the merits, and then the court made the ruling. So that's different than mine. And, and I really had gone, I sent you all right before the hearing a document, and I tried to attach attachments where I tried to engage, with the board about this matter multiple times, given my unique circumstances. And, I was even told there's nothing to appeal. The BZA would not be able to schedule an appeal for disposition without the fee being paid. But there's no appeal to even be had because there's nothing to appeal at this time. So I do think the $1,200 is not insignificant. It's not a nominal fee. Paying a fee should ensure that my appeal is actually considered. It can't even be considered now. There's no guarantee that the ordinance will be reinstated or that my appeal will even be necessary in the future. It's an extremely high fee of $1,200, which is a lot of money, particularly in these current times. And I'm a federal worker. Lastly, if and when the court were to overturn the lower court and make the EHO ordinance valid and then make the EHO permit valid, then would be the time that it would be right for appeal, and then the fee would be due. There's no deadline required by law, and that would be a fair and equitable result. And like I said last time, even then, it's practically an unusual situation because the land's been sold, the stakeholders aren't even in the picture anymore. The architects and builders are from the former plans. Any questions the board would have to raise with the builder to remedy any of the issues that I flagged in my appeal, when there would be nobody there to even address it. But that's beside the point. That only becomes an issue if we actually get to a hearing on the merits. So I respectfully ask that the court reconsider its decision to have this to require this fee, given the unique circumstances of this case, at least to require the fee at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Ms. Mullins.
I'm happy to jump in with my thoughts here. All the other applications for EHO permits have been deferred in order to preserve those rights. We cannot defer this case because the application is not complete. So I don't see how the applicant can preserve their right in the future if they don't complete the application. So my view is that this should be a dismissal hearing because the application is incomplete.
Does the applicant object to a dismissal of the appeal at this time? Given all the status of this, because the property was sold, right? So it's not proceeding to be developed as an EHO development. So that would seem to me to indicate that a dismissal would be completely appropriate. Then she never has to pay the fee because there's no chance of this being an EHO project unless something new happens. And then there's a new application, and at that time, an appeal could be initiated.
And
I
that,
can't,
Would the applicant like to respond to that? Ms. Johnson?
I just couldn't, I could hear what was said, but I can't, it's very small on the screen. Who was speaking? Was that the board or the county or?
That was
Board
the
member.
board member, Carol McCoskey. That was me.
Okay, so if that is how it would work, then that would work. I didn't know if that would make sense that since the land was sold, that if somewhere years from now, let's say the ordinance gets reinstated, the permit becomes valid, and then somewhere down the road, the property ends up being sold again, or they want to develop it, then they would apply for the EHO permit then? Or how would that, is that what you're saying?
Well,
board member?
I've said what it seems to me, but I can't provide you with advice about what would happen in the future. But it seems to me that given that this property isn't any longer owned by the permit holder, somebody else potentially could take the permit forward. But my understanding is that no one is doing that at this time. So it's kind of your decision, but it does seem to me that dismissal is appropriate at this time because the likelihood that this thing is going forward, that this application will go forward, given the new owners, is very small. I think that's what we heard in December. But that is up to you. I can't guarantee you that nobody's going to take that forward. But if a new application came forward, certainly then you would have the same appeal rights that you have now for this one.
Yes, I appreciate that, but there wouldn't have to be a new application, would there?
We don't know.
I mean,
Right.
that,
Basically, somebody could get the old permit and move forward with it. But my understanding is from what we heard last time that that is
That's
not the
pretty
case.
unlikely.
But that's up to you to decide what you want to rely on. I guess my question to you is, do you object to us dismissing this today?
well, I think just thinking out loud, if I may, for 1 second, the issue would then still, if it wasn't, the concern is that in the future, no one knows what the future holds. The property could be sold, even if the family's best intentions are to live there for 50 years. And then if the EHO permit follows the land and not the permit holder, then whoever buys the property next gets the land with the permit. And then they can go ahead and build the big apartment building with and that was never an opportunity to challenge that based on all the reasons I set forth in my appeal without getting into the merits of that. But that's the concern. But like I said earlier, that really begets practicality because those are old. Because if I were to appear before you all and there were issues, there's no architects or builders who were the original ones with the EHO permit. So there would be no one to correct anything or address anything. I don't even know how the merits hearing could even proceed, frankly, but.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Malice,
Good.
sorry.
So at our last hearing in December, I believe our instruction to you was to decide whether or not you wished to pay the fee, and that the interval was intended for you to do your research and make your decision. Have you made that decision?
Yeah, so what I've been trying to do since the hearing is reach out to the county and get an answer regarding whether the permit follows the land or the permit follows the permit holder. And I finally got some part of an answer today without a full answer with respect to the sale. So I have been working on that, and I haven't really gotten a definitive answer with respect to that. And it's really a question of the county. It's not get a lawyer and spend more money and figure it out. It's a generic question that goes with the ordinance. But since that's still unresolved and potentially could be an issue in the future, I would like to not dismiss the case and have, and like I said, ask for reconsideration of the requirement to pay the fee at this time and be required to pay the fee should this even become ripe for appeal, noting how I distinguish the other two cases that were already in the pipeline with the board scheduled for a merits hearing. And they ended up having the hearing, holding it in abeyance. That wasn't the posture of my case. There was nothing to appeal. The appeal was void. It wasn't until the county filed the appeal that we'd even know that they were going to appeal. Very different. The other two people were already on the calendar with the county.
So
With the
2
board.
months deferral was not sufficient for you to make a decision.
As I just indicated, I've been trying to get in touch with the board. I just finally got an answer this morning. That's a partial answer. So I'm basing my conclusion on this partial answer I got from the board, and it wasn't an answer. So I'm left with I do not wish to dismiss it. I came before you to request a reconsideration of the requirement of paying the fee at this time for all the reasons I noted.
Right. So my problem here is if the circuit court or the Supreme Court of Virginia tomorrow overturns this, there's no appeal here, right? The
Clock is running.
the clock is running. The neighbor could start building tomorrow. They have an approved EHO permit. So under Virginia law, a appeal to the BZA has an automatic stay of the underlying action. Here, that stay hasn't taken place because there's no completed application. So without having paid the fee, the EHO can be built at any time as soon as the court acts. And so
If I pay the fee at that time, there's nothing to appeal at this time. So couldn't that fee be held in abeyance? And then when and if the court even makes that decision, I pay the high $1,200 fee, then it just seems not fair.
That would have to be something that is litigated on the effects of that, right? And that's what this board is trying to prevent, is uncertainty between a potential developer and the neighbors. Right.
But if the case is dismissed, then the HO permit follows the land, and the owners sell the property next year, and the court rules and it validates the lower court and reinstates the ordinance and the permit, then I had this case dismissed, I have no rights in that instance either. Then the door is completely closed.
Right.
So my view is that if you wish to preserve your rights, you must pay the appeal, like all the other appellants have done, and then we will defer your case.
And that timeline is typically 30 days. You have 30 days to appeal the underlying action. So in this case, I don't have the dates up in front of me, but we're
respectfully. Oh, I'm sorry. Respectfully, I did file the appeal within the 30 days. There is no deadline for paying the fee. So it's the fee, not the appeal, that I'm asking about.
The application is not considered filed and finalized until the fee is paid. Otherwise, anyone could file an appeal, and then pay the fee 3 years later. And then the underlying builder would be stopped from acting and building for 3 years. And so that, this board can't let this keep going on indefinitely for those reasons.
I understand that, but that isn't the posture we're in because there is no valid permit. And there's nobody building and there's nobody being stayed. The only person harmed here is me, who has to pay a $1,200 fee for a hypothetical appeal.
I'm prepared to make a motion.
I mean, I'm just going to repeat myself one more time, and then I'll entertain a motion. If the Supreme Court tomorrow says EHO is good to go, your neighbor can build tomorrow, and you will not be able to pay your fee in time before they start.
And if the case is dismissed, I'm in the same posture, right?
So, with that being said, I sense this board is moving towards dismissing. Is that, would you like to prevent the dismissal by paying the fee if that's what this board chooses to do?
No, I'm not. I do not believe the fee should be paid at this time on a hypothetical appeal. I filed the appeal. There's no deadline for the fee. I feel like that is a reserve. I reserve.
Ms. McCrusker.
I know you wanted to make a motion. Why don't you go ahead, Ms. Malice? Go make your.
Do you have another thought?
I was going to make a motion, including a 10-day period where upon the dismissal is effective, if
Okay.
it's not.
You can add, so my motion is whereas the appeal fee has not been paid and the application remains incomplete, and whereas the property in question has been sold to another party who is not building an EHO, I move to dismiss appeal V-12021-24-APP-1. And I'll take a friendly amendment.
Yeah, I suggest that we amend that to simply make the dismissal effective as of 10 days from today.
10 business days?
10 business days from today, unless the applicant has paid the full fee on or before that date.
Second.
And I'm sorry, Ms. Freshman, I have one more minor friendly amendment as well. Can we add the word presently to the neighbor building?
Whereas the property in question has been sold
Sold and has no, what was your language?
to another party who is not the EHO permit holder.
And has no present intention to build, or, whatever I just want to add the word present because they could always change their mind.
Okay, and has no present intention to build. So do you want me to repeat the whole thing?
Why not? Right. Let's repeat the whole thing.
Whereas the appeal fee has not been paid and the application remains incomplete, whereas the property in question has been sold to another party who is not the EHO permit holder and has no intention to build.
No present intention to build.
No present intention to build. I move to dismiss appeal V-12021-24-APP-1 effective 10 business days from today, unless on or before that date, the appeal fee has been paid.
I guess, should we then state that if the fee has been paid as of that date, the matter will be deferred?
Well, we have to schedule it.
Okay, we'll schedule
Okay,
that.
should, and I can add, and should the fee be paid in that interval, the BZA will schedule the matter for a deferral hearing.
I would just say for a hearing.
Right,
Because the deferral, we have to have.
okay,
Yeah.
we will schedule the case for a hearing.
Is there a second?
There's
Second.
about like 4 seconds. I already said.
A motion read by Ms. Malice, seconded by Ms. Freshman 4 times. Is there any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Malice,
Aye.
Ms. Freshman,
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey,
Aye.
Mr. Kumana.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion for dismissal with those additions passes 5-0. Lastly, I believe we have some minutes.
No. Quincy Street, number 11.
No, we scheduled that for May, so that has been removed from the agenda.
Yay,
We're on 12.
yay. I move approval of the minutes of February 19, 2025.
Second.
A motion for approval of the February 19 minutes made by Ms. Freshman, seconded by Ms. Malice. Is there any further discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, I will call the roll. Ms. Malice.
Aye.
Ms. Freshman.
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey.
Aye.
Mr. Kumana.
Abstain.
Abstain.
Chair votes aye. Motion for passage of the minutes passes 4-0 to 1. One abstention. Is there any further business? The agenda having been completed, this meeting is adjourned.
Bye-bye.
See you next month.